Alright, so this is my presentation from home about my teacher's work sample. My topic for my 10-day unit plan was uneven heating of the Earth's surfaces. I've got a couple of little factors here, so let's quickly run through them. Overall, my school was Rock Quarry Middle School. It was in Tuscaloosa. The periods were around 55 minutes a period. I taught about 5 classes in a 7-period day. That included 2 periods that were prep. Overall, this entire unit plan, what I was focusing on, like informational facts wise, was for 5th period, my 5th period class. All my classes were advanced classes, so I really didn't have to deal with very many behavioral issues or anything like that. But demographically, my class was, well, not my class, but the overall school demographic was around 4% Asian American, around 26.11 African American, and only a small amount of Hispanic, coming in at 0.99%. And then, of course, white was 68.47%. So overall, it was a small demographic change of diversity, really. The student-teacher ratio was around 14.5 to 1. Talking about free and reduced lunches, there was around 21% of the student population was eligible for free lunches, and then about 3% was for reduced lunch. So yeah, those are pretty much my quick little run-through of my overall demographic for the school. Again, I was teaching 6th grade Earth and Space Science, so let's move on to the learning goals. I did 3 ALCOSS standards, the 6.1, 6.2, and 6.8. I'll read over those really quickly. For the 6.1 ALCOSS standard, that was identifying global patterns of atmospheric movement, including El Nino, the Gulf Stream, the jet stream, the Coriolis effect, and global winds that influence local weather. This learning goal, I didn't cover very much of it during my unit plan because my teacher wanted to cover more of it later on. So this was like my least hit standard. But mastery, students would be able to estimate the movement of winds on a map, and this includes warm and cold winds, so land and sea breezes, sea winds. Right, the next standard was ALCOSS 6.2. It says students will describe factors that cause changes to the Earth's surface over time. Examples of this is earthquakes, volcanoes, weathering, farming, conservation, those type of things. This was the standard that I focused on mostly during my unit plan. For mastery of this, I said students who master the standard will be able to explain at least 80% of the events that can cause changes to the Earth's surface over time. So I wanted them to pretty much be able to name it and explain it in their own words to about 80% of the events. And then thirdly, my last learning goal went around with ALCOSS standard 6.8. Students will describe how Earth's rotation, its axial tilt, and the distance from the equator cause variations in heating and cooling of various locations on Earth. This standard goes along with the previous standard that I talked about for causing changes on Earth's surface over time, kind of combining those standards in the unit plan. But alright, so coming into it, my assessment plan was of course a pre-assessment, a group of formative assessments, and a post-assessment. My pre-assessment, I didn't have, due to weather days and everything like that, we had to fill in some lesson plans that my teacher had, so it kind of like messed up my overall unit plan for the pre-test part. So I used the starters to pre-test each day. And then my formative assessments were, of course, AmSty labs, trying to get them the hands-on of the concept of how heating and cooling of the Earth's surfaces change, things like weather and winds and all that type of stuff. And then, of course, my post-assessment was a multiple choice test that I used GradeCam.com to make it easier to just simply hold up your GradeCam answering sheet, and it grades it for you, tells you averages, highs and lows, all those type of things. So it really worked out very well. But alright, I'll move on to my design for instruction. I have like a simple little makeup that you can see in the attachments that I'll post with the video. You'll be able to see this more clearly. But overall, it's 4 of my best lessons that I did for the unit plan, or at least in my opinion. The first one, day one, it was a 2-day lab. The starter was of the soil and water, make a prediction of which one will heat and cool the fastest and explain it. So I'm getting them to pretty much explain to me everything they know about how heating and cooling of soil and water are affected. So I'm pre-testing their knowledge. Then, of course, one of the cool things that we did in our class was Good Things, and I incorporated that just to keep up with the regular teacher's schedule. But Good Things is just 3 to 5 minutes of the students being allowed to share any good things, any good ideas that they might have from the past couple of days. Certain things like, oh, I have a baseball game coming up, and we just kind of encourage them. And then next, I'd start off with my lab, which was Inquiry 3.1. Investigating rates of heating and cooling. So the lab was all about you taking a heat lamp and you have 2 different beakers, one with soil, one with water at equal distances to make an equal and fair test. And they got to see that soil heats up a lot faster than water does, but it cools a lot faster as well. And they found out that water has a good retention of heat, so it takes a lot longer to heat up, but once it heats up, it takes a whole lot longer for it to cool down also. So they got a cool little hands-on at that, and came to an end of the class period, so I had to move on to the second part, which was the graphing of all the information or the data that we collected. So that was day 2. We graphed all the information. And all these different labs and worksheets I'm talking about, I'm going to show you some pictures of the actual student work at the end of the video. But so we're just going to move along. For the assessment for that 2-day lesson, I just made them do the reflection questions from the inquiry book, which was the AmSty book. And we would check it just to make sure that it seems like they're on the right page, keeping them on toes of actually writing down their answers, trying to get them to do it in complete sentences, but you can only say it so many times. But anyways, the lesson 2, that was one of my vocabulary reading literacy strategies. I used a Links vocabulary worksheet, which again I'll show you later on, where they take the word and then make all these linking connections to the definition. So like a picture, a definition, a phrase, those type of things, anything to connect back to the definition. So that was a really good lesson. We did terms like radiation, conduction, convection. We even did greenhouse effects and gases, latent heat, and even air masses, which would go on to a cloud logic lesson that I did next, actually, or 2 days later. So after that, our assessment was, checking the links activity just to see that they get it and helping at the end to solve any misconceptions they might have been confused about certain things. Lesson 3 was another lesson that broke up into 2 days. It was actually a lab for Inquiry 4.1. All about investigating the temperature of air. So they saw how the surfaces, soil and water, how they're affected by heat in different ways, and now we're seeing how the air above those surfaces are affected. So we're taking them in a step basis of how this uneven heating of the Earth's surface works. So came into it, did the lab, which was really cool, convection tube set up. You get to see, put those beakers underneath the convection tubes, and we turned off all the lights, used little punk sticks, and showed how we used the smoke as an indicator. I told them it was a food dye. We're not testing the smoke, we're testing the air. But anyways, they got to see the smoke and be able to see how the air is affected above surfaces. So it's getting them into that point of cloud formation and weather and all that. So it worked out really well. Again, I just used the reflection questions, answered those, and we did a discussion for a whole class collaboration. Worked out really well. And then my last lesson that I thought was really effective, the starter was think about the day. We did the links activity, so I'm making a connection to a previous lesson. And I want them to tell me in their own words what latent heat means, because that was what our next lesson was going into. Of course, we did good things. And then we got into our reading selections. I tried to play a game where you pass a ball around, you do a certain amount of drops, you don't get a hot that day, which is another story about rewards. But anyways, we did a reading selection about air masses and latent heat, so they got to make that connection. And then came back and we did a reading selection about cloud logic that teaches them about how they name clouds. And we did a little activity, which I'll show you again. The assessment, of course, was the cloud activity. We graded it. You'll be able to see what I'm talking about, not for anything correct or anything, but just something to do. My analysis of the students, we ended off with that multiple choice test about tornadoes, thunderstorms, and hurricanes, of course. I had 10 students make A's, 6 B's, 7 C's, and 1 person made a D, and that was one of our IEP students. She needed a little extra help, which we did help her later on. If you can see, there's my little graph here that we needed. And of course my evaluation reflection, like I said, that one standard, the 6.2, we didn't or 6.1, we didn't get to reach all of it. We used it in later lessons, but my most successful one again was the uneven, the changes over time for Earth's surfaces. And the least one that I saw was, of course, students who mastered the standard did not exist due to the fact that all information was not covered. So again, 2 weeks later, this information was repeated and students reached a mastery of understanding. So that one standard went on to another set of unit plans. Alright, so that's pretty much the run through of my poster. So now I'm going to go through and just quickly show you some of my student work that I did. Alright, so this right here is a list of some of the starters one of my students did, of course. We get them to write these in their student notebooks, which we check in our notebook check either every day or we do it at the end of the week. So yeah, they have a bunch of different things, and as you can see, there's a question and then I'll get them to refer back to a question later on. Different things, just keeping them on their toes. Here's a lab sheet for Inquiry 3.1. This is from the AmSty books. But as you can see, you know, it's question answers, they read directions, they recorded all their temperatures as they changed, both heating and cooling, water and soil. And then on the back, quick little homework activity that, you know, overall getting them used to reading data tables and being able to follow them. The next day, of course, we came in and this is an example of one of the graphing situations where they labeled water and soil, their differences here, and then they plotted them. It was a little strenuous, but some of the students caught on to it very quickly, but others it took a little longer to help them out. And then last but not least, this is their assessment. They would write their reflection questions in their notebooks, and again, we always use those for notebook checks, and just overall we can look at them and see how much they're learning and how much more we need to cover certain things. Here is student 4.1 lab sheet. Again, we're testing the temperature of, you know, how the air is affected and all those different aspects. It was pretty well executed lab. I don't know if you can see this, but this is a print off of the Inquiry 4.1 reflection questions. Try to get the students to write complete sentences, of course, but sometimes it's a little harder. These next two are two of my favorites. This is a links activity. Like I said, you do a new term. You do a reminding word to help you refer back to it. Then you got your essential definition. This student went a little blatant with just heat from the sun, but you know, overall that's their essential definition. They made themselves a little story to link back to it, and of course they do linking pictures so that they can actually experience what they're visualizing. So that works out. Next, sorry, my dog, of course. We go to cloud types. This is that list I was telling you about, Cloud Logic. It's literally using, telling them how they use general appearance and altitude to classify the clouds. So they really enjoyed that. I got them, this is just like a quick copy of it. Normally you would have some cotton balls and stuff right here that I had to print over it, but they literally would use cotton balls and create their own cloud and then use their cloud logic to name their cloud. They really enjoyed that. For a quick lesson, this is a lesson that I didn't include in my project, but it did work out. This is like a big overall picture. I took this from a Earth and Space Ames book that Dr. Nichols actually let me borrow. I used these little cutouts, I cut them into little sheets and gave them smart cards that would literally give them information kind of like this over here, the altitude and general appearance facts. So they'd use these and then label. You see there's numbered off right here. They'd label it off and be able to predict which clouds are where. And I used this as a competition to see who could finish first and upload those pictures onto Edmodo for them to use as a study aid. It worked out really well. But now let's get to our post-assessment. Alright, I used a GradeCam sheet. Overall, just type up your questions, do your answers, of course. It was a 20 question exam, as you can see. And I used a GradeCam sheet. You print off these little bad boys here, and you can label your answers in and everything. Give your students a GradeCam ID. As you can see, it's wrote in right there. Yes, of course, my student made a 95. That means I'm an awesome teacher, by the way. And anyways, literally, they just walk up to the GradeCam website. Of course, not GradeCam website, but they walk up to the webcam using gradecam.com, and they can hold it up and it'll give them their right answers, their wrong answers, their grade, and it even gives the teacher an overall average. So it really helps out with grading issues. These are just two other quick little things I thought was really cool. I wanted to show you all. Here's a little quick video of the layers of the atmosphere, and also got them to write little rap songs and stuff to help them remember the layers of the atmosphere. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I just want to say thank you for the semester. Thank you for everything that we've learned and had to do. I hope this video is efficient enough for my presentation. I will upload it with my picture and my TWS paper after this video is over, but thank you.